6 Crazy Glitch in the Matrix Stories. My best friend and I were driving around for fun last night and we ended up in a town named Oxford, Ohio. I rarely ever go to Oxford because it's so far away and I really don't know much about it, but the roads took us there and that's where our story begins. We were in a certain part of Oxford that I would categorize as the back roads. Very vacant, cold air, looks like it would house maybe 15 people in 1 square mile. It was late at night, maybe 10:30 or 11 o'clock, when we ended up on these back roads. My friend and I got very quiet at this point because we both realized the same thing without saying it out loud. He then looks over at me while I'm driving and says, "Does everything feel off to you right now?" To which I respond yes very quickly because I was thinking the exact same thing. Everything felt extremely off. I was getting cold, I was nervous, very anxious, very weirded out by the setting we were in. Just to make things clear, my friend and I go on drives at night constantly. We always end up in weird places we've never been before. It's not something we're not used to. It's a very frequent happening, so it's not like we were anxious due to being in a different place we hadn't been to before. We both start talking about how weird and uncomfortable we are feeling, so I start to map our way home on my phone. He then says, "I feel like this is the place we would see a Wendigo," which I had no idea what that was, so he showed me a picture which just creeped me out even more, but that was the end of that conversation. We start following directions to get back to our town. Google Maps takes us through a town named Hamilton, Ohio, which I frequent all the time. That's where my tattoo shop is, a coffee shop my old friends own, and it's a really great place to drive around and explore, so I know the town like the back of my hand. This is where things get weird. As I said, I know Hamilton extremely well. I turned off my GPS because I knew the way home from there. But while we were driving through Hamilton, I had no idea where we were. I didn't recognize a single thing. Not my tattoo shop, not my friend's coffee shop, not the family video, the gas stations, Taco Bell, Walgreens, none of it, and my friend didn't either. We had absolutely no clue where we were, but I still knew how to get home. Fast forward to when I dropped him off and I returned to my own house. I get home and I had to eat, so I'm making a bagel and telling my sister about how my night was. I was telling her about how I had to chase a dog through traffic, making total sense in my head while I was speaking, and at the end of my story my sister said that I was basically speaking plain gibberish. I was stuttering, putting words together that didn't make sense, the whole thing. I thought it was weird but didn't really care because I was so tired. The next morning, today, rolls around and the same thing keeps happening. I'm making absolutely no sense to anyone I'm speaking to. Even the handyman working on our house right now asked me if I was okay. I didn't understand what was going on. My friend and I decide to take another long drive tonight as well. Instead of going far west, we decide to go far east. We end up at a lake we had never heard of, so we explored that for a little bit. We were both feeling okay-ish, but ever since leaving Oxford we have both felt a little off. When we're exploring this tiny park at the lake, I start getting super anxious again, so we decide to go back to my car and start heading home. I'm anxious the whole way home, on the borderline of an anxiety attack, but I somehow managed to keep it together. We decided to park in our local Kroger parking lot and sit and talk and play on our phones and whatnot. We aren't out as late as we were last night. We hadn't been talking for about 5 minutes and all of a sudden my body just forces me to start laughing. I mean cackling. I was hysterically laughing over absolutely nothing and I couldn't stop. It was to the point where I was crying, but my tears felt like acid and were burning my eyes, but I couldn't stop. My friend had no idea what was going on and was clearly starting to get uncomfortable, so I tried to stop laughing but I couldn't. I couldn't see anything because my eyes were burning and I just could not stop cackling. I eventually decided to take him home, but I still never stopped laughing and my eyes were still burning. I'm home now and laying in bed and I'm back to having that super off feeling. I don't know what's going on, but I need to know. Something about being in that weird part of Oxford last night did something to my friend and one need help figuring out what it is. Maybe it was a glitch in the Matrix, but maybe it was something more. This has happened sporadically over the past 9-ish years. Everyone thought I was either losing my mind or full of shit. And then my husband, a logical science nerd who has a rational explanation for everything, witnessed and experienced it for himself. The first occurrence was my keys going missing. I only keep my keys in one of two places, my purse or the kitchen counter. If my husband uses my car, he will either leave my keys in the cup holder, leave them in his pocket, or put them on the kitchen counter. I really need to stress that my husband is honestly the epitome of responsibility. Bills are never late. Credit score is immaculate. He never loses shit because he always puts things in their spot. He won't go to sleep if he knows he didn't put something away. So, when he was the last person to have my keys and my keys were nowhere to be found, I was confused. We dumped my purse, tore the house apart, dug through both of our cars, dug in every pants pocket and hoodie we own, we even dug through the trash can. My keys were gone and we didn't know how. He honestly thought I had them and was pranking him. He said now would be a good time to tell me where the keys are as the locksmith was pulling in our driveway. I don't find enjoyment out of things like that, and he knows I don't, but he didn't understand how my keys just disappeared. A month or so later I was getting ready to head out. I went to put my phone in the pocket of my purse and felt something. It was my keys. I ran into the bedroom to show my husband what I had found and where I found them. He didn't believe me. He said he took everything out of my purse, pulled the lining of the pockets out, and flipped it upside down and shook it. There's no way they were there the whole time. I had been using that purse for a few months and had been in that pocket many times. I don't know how they got there. This morning I learned that objects on my body also have the capability of moving on their own. I can't say that it disappeared because I had no idea it was even gone until I saw it on the floor. I had just woken up and gone to the bathroom. On my way back to my room I saw what looked like my wedding band laying on the floor. I looked at my hand and my wedding band wasn't on my finger. The kicker is that I have an issue with retaining fluid. I have to take diuretics every day. However, they haven't been working very well since the pharmacy changed the manufacturer. It's an uncomfortable task to take my rings off to clean them. And that's the only time I ever take them off. The events that took place happened after my grandfather's death. To give a background, this story was during my mid-teenage years and I'm currently in my early 20s now. Around the time of these events, my grandfather had been in a deteriorating condition for right around 2 years in terms of his physical health. As for my auntie, she was recently diagnosed with cancer and was only given a few weeks to live. We went to visit our auntie around 2 weeks after my grandfather's passing. It is vital to the story to share that my auntie was under intensive care and was only with a caretaker who did not know any of our family members, let alone have any news about the passing of my grandfather. She told us that my grandfather visited her and told her that it was going to be okay. He told her that they will be together soon and that it will be a better place. With my auntie not having known of his passing, he asked what and where this meant. He told her that it was a place where the sun was always shining and that they already had a mansion waiting for everyone else to arrive. He also shows her a photo from his wallet of him and two of our uncles riding a Cadillac. These uncles of mine had already passed away many years ago from that time. Also, my grandfather and my uncles were fond of cars, particularly Cadillacs, but never actually owned one before. He also told her to tell my father that he loves him and not to worry about it. My father immediately cried after this. After our visit, we were given the news the next morning that my auntie has passed away. The most surreal event that happened to her family was that on the day of her burial, a 1973 Cadillac Coupe de Ville happened to park a block away from the memorial place. The 73 de Ville, according to my father, was one of the exact models my grandfather fell in love with when he stayed in the United States as an overseas worker. We live in a third world country where Cadillacs are really rare, no less a vintage model. This happened a couple of years ago. One night my mom went out for dinner with my aunts and I was home alone with my dog, a miniature poodle, who naturally barks at everything. My front door has 2 locks, not including the chain. Anyways, when you want to lock the doorknob you have to push a button in the middle of it so no one can turn it from the outside. A few hours go by and I'm laying on the couch scrolling on Instagram. My dog was asleep by my feet. The TV was on but I had it on mute, so everything was quiet. Then we heard the button on the doorknob pop out. Naturally, my dog jumps off the couch and starts barking at the front door. Like I stated, the door has 2 locks, so I get up to open the door for my mom so she doesn't have to bother with the top lock. I turned the porch light on and opened the door only to find no one there. We both heard and reacted to the sound of the lock popping out, meaning someone had to have had a key and was trying to open the door. I will add that my dad passed away, but that was over 10 years ago and this has only happened twice. Another time, we were in the kitchen because my dog followed me everywhere while I was cleaning up and the same thing happened. We both heard the lock. My dog started barking like crazy and ran to the door. Only this time, I heard him jumping up and down like he does when anyone comes in the house. He liked to pounce on people, so naturally I'm thinking my mom just got home. A few minutes go by and she doesn't come in the kitchen and I don't hear her go upstairs. I call out to her and get no response. So I go in the living room to say hi and she's not there. My dog is on the couch chilling. I go check the front door, and the bottom lock is once again unlocked but the top lock and chain are still in place. I don't know what to make of it. Who was my dog jumping on? I don't know if it was a glitch in the matrix or if it was my dad. Either way it was unsettling. Today after work, I opened one of the small containers of some sweet Haagen-Dazs caramel cone that I bought earlier this week. I snacked on it for a bit while mindlessly scrolling through social media on my computer, then put the container back in the freezer. A few hours later, I decided to get some more before getting ready for bed, but the container isn't in the freezer. I vividly remembered eating some and putting it back in the freezer, so this was a little unnerving. I looked in the trash to make sure I didn't throw it out, and the container was not there either. To think I have a container of ice cream melting in my apartment somewhere, I started looking all over, in every room, but still couldn't find it. The plastic film that covers the ice cream when you first open it was still at my desk, but the container just vanished. The only explanation I can think of is someone came into my apartment and took only the ice cream, but this is also unlikely because I keep the door locked. Just to be safe I bolted the extra deadbolt and looked in every room and closet. I'm not too worried over missing ice cream, but the idea that either I vividly hallucinated eating ice cream and kept an old plastic film on my desk until today, or something just vanished into thin air in my home, is unsettling. And don't get the idea that I'm a hoarder and it's under a mountain of trash because the film was on my desk. My place is basically empty. Tonight, May 3, 2020, my boyfriend and I were sitting outside in our car just smoking cigs and listening to music. For reference, we live in mid-Massachusetts. Anyway, we were looking at the sky when I noticed a satellite. At first I thought it was cool and all and pointed it out to him. But then we noticed another. And another. And another. We counted I believe 6 satellites all in the same orbit, same velocity, and spaced relatively the same apart. There was only one satellite that was off, and it was doing the same thing except it was further down toward the horizon. Now I know there are such things as trailing formations with satellites, but what really freaked me out was when I kept looking up at the sky I noticed something else up there. Just above the apex of a triangle formation of stars there was a bright, flashing white light. It flashed once every couple of seconds. At first, I thought it was a plane or something. But then I noticed it was moving, slowly. Very slowly. Every time it flashed again it was just a bit further up the sky. By the time it was almost directly above us, I noticed another satellite coming off from my left almost directly above me. I kid you not, I watched as this light stopped moving as it flashed, then stopped flashing altogether. I then watched the satellite fly directly to the spot that the flashing object would be, and then just vanish. Now I'm not saying it's aliens, but I'm not saying it's humans either. What on earth, or off Earth, could this have possibly been? I understand that the first string of satellites could be unrelated, but I saw some weird stuff in the sky tonight, so I'm not ruling out a coordinated alien invasion. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video don't forget to press like and subscribe.